There's a particular kind of madness that comes when the world insists that what you see isn't there, when the truth you know in your bones is twisted, denied, or rewritten, not just by one person, but by entire systems, communities, or institutions. And that's what collective gaslighting feels like. It's been made to doubt yourself in public with an audience watching and a chorus of voices insisting that you're the problem. I've sat with women who've been through this, women who've lost jobs, friendships, reputations, and even their families because they refuse to deny reality. And I've lived through parts of it myself. The cold shock of being made an outsider for speaking the truth. This disorientation of wondering if you're the only sane one left in the room. Gaslighting on a collective scale is brutal because it doesn't just distort the facts, it distorts your sense of self. It makes you question your memory, your intuition, and your ability to trust your own eyes. And that's the deepest injury of all, not just that you were lied to, but that the world demanded that you lie to yourself. When we talk about gaslighting, we usually picture it in intimate settings, so like one person manipulating another until they doubt their own mind. But collective gaslighting operates on a much larger scale. It happens when institutions, media, or communities repeat a distorted version of reality until anyone who challenges it is labelled wrong, bad, or dangerous. You see that when whistleblowers are smeared, when women who tell uncomfortable truths are called hateful, and when abuse survivors are accused of being delusional or vengeful. It's not just disagreement, it's a campaign to make reality itself feel unstable. Collective gaslighting thrives in environments where image matters more than integrity, where people fear being seen as the wrong kind of person, where belonging is conditional on silence. And if you've lived through that, if you've been on the receiving end of collective denial, then you know the psychic violence it causes. You begin to internalize the message. If everyone says I'm wrong, maybe I am. And that's the trap. Gaslighting teaches you that other people's comfort matters more than the truth, that to be accepted, you must betray your perception, and that betrayal of your own mind is the real trauma. Let's talk about what this does to your body. When you're constantly being told that your reality isn't real, your nervous system goes into a state of chronic threat. Your body starts living in a permanent loop of fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. You become hypervigilant, scanning constantly for signs that you're safe, that someone believes you, and that the ground beneath your feet won't shift again. I often say to my clients, your nervous system doesn't know that you're safe yet. And that's exactly what happens here. You might find yourself replaying conversations, obsessing over what you said or didn't say. You might go numb, detached, dissociated, unable to feel joy. And you might feel an overwhelming urge to explain yourself, to prove your innocence, and to make people understand. But the more you explain, the more drained you become, because gaslighting isn't a misunderstanding. It's a strategy, and it's designed to exhaust you into silence. Physiologically, gaslighting activates the same pathways as trauma. Your amygdala, the alarm system in your brain, becomes overactive. Your prefrontal cortex, which handles reasoning, starts to shut down under stress. You're not overreacting. Your body's responding to danger that's both psychological and social. And that's why the healing process has to start not in the mind but in the body, because when the body has been trained to doubt itself, logic isn't enough to bring you home. One of the hardest parts of healing from collective gaslighting is the grief of losing your place in a world that once felt safe, the grief of realising that people you love chose comfort over truth, and the grief of knowing that no apology may ever come. It's a kind of ambiguous loss because the people, the institutions, the communities might still exist, but the trust is gone. And yet you're still expected to smile, to move on and to stay polite. That expectation itself becomes another layer of gaslighting. The message that you shouldn't make others uncomfortable with your pain. But healing requires telling the truth, even when your voice shakes, even if no one's clapping, and even if no one believes you. The act of naming what happened is how you reclaim your reality. You don't owe anyone silence to make them feel better about what they did. You're allowed to name the harm and not to stay stuck in it, but to free yourself from pretending it didn't happen. So how do you begin to trust your perception again? It starts with slowing down, learning to feel what's right, learning to feel what's real, right now. And that can be as simple as noticing your breath, your feet on the ground, the temperature of the air. Those small sensory anchors remind your nervous system that you're here and you can trust your own experience. Next, start to separate your voice from the chorus of other people's opinions. Ask yourself, what do I actually know to be true? Not what would make people like me. Not what would make things easier. What do I know in my bones? That question, when asked regularly, rebuilds the neural pathways of self-trust, and you start to feel the difference between your intuition and your fear, between other people's projections and your own clarity. Healing from gaslighting isn't about convincing anyone else. It's about remembering that you were right to notice. You were right to speak up, and you're still right to hold on to your integrity. It's a quiet kind of courage that comes from surviving collective gaslighting. You learn to live without external validation, and you learn to stand in your own knowing, even when it costs you everything. You become someone who values truth over approval, and that changes you permanently. But it's not easy. There are days when you wish you could go back before you knew what you know, and I've been there. Before the betrayal, before the loss, before the loneliness of being awake in a world that prefers sleep. And I've been there, and what I can tell you is this: you won't always feel raw. There comes a point when the pain turns into wisdom, where the loneliness becomes clarity, and where you start to recognise other truth tellers, the ones who've walked through fire and kept their eyes open too. You find each other, you start to build new communities, not based on conformity but on authenticity, and little by little you start to feel safe again, not because the world has changed but because you have. If you're listening to this and thinking, that's me, I don't know how to trust anyone anymore, please hear this. It's completely understandable. When you've been gaslit by entire systems, the idea of safety feels foreign, but safety isn't something you wait for, it's something you relearn. Start small. Notice when your body softens, a kind word, a warm light, a moment of peace. Those moments are evidence that your system still knows what safety feels like. Let yourself take up space again. Say what you see, write what you remember, and believe your own story. You don't need the world's permission to trust yourself again. If any of this feels particularly familiar, if you've been gaslit by a partner, a community, or an ideology that demanded your silence, please know that healing is possible. You don't have to untangle it alone. That's the work I do with women every day, helping them come back to themselves after betrayal, coercion, or silencing. We focus on nervous system healing, rebuilding trust in intuition, and processing grief safely. And if you're ready to take that next step, to have a space where your reality is not just accepted, but believed, you can reach me through my website, kellyoliverdougall.co.uk. You deserve a space where you can say this happened and have someone respond, I know, I understand, because that's where the healing begins, not in being told what to think, but in being seen as who you are. So if this spoke to you, take a deep breath. You're not crazy, you're not broken, you're coming home to the truth, and it's been waiting for you all along.